Erika.
And I'm Sean.
And we are the Blanchards. This podcast is created to be a safe place where we discuss topics regarding faith, love, family, marriage,
and everything in between through the perspective of an interracial blended couple focused on ministry
and mental health. No topic is off limits. We're about to have adult conversation through the eyes of a Latina scholar, life coach, mother, and wife.
Along with the perspective of a Black king, engineer, entrepreneur, father, and husband. We're about to take brown and Black excellence to a whole new level.
Family Unlocked starts now.
Hello. Welcome back.
Hey, everyone.
I'm Sean.
And I'm Erika.
And welcome to Family Unlocked podcast.
And we are your hosts. All right. What are we going to talk about today, Mr. Blanchard?
Today, I think that we should discuss about communication, because I believe that we originally did an episode about communication. However, I think that this topic is so important that we need to revisit it again.
Revisit this topic. All right.
Yes. And so I realize in most marriages, usually issues that can be challenging, usually revolve around either communication or finances. So for me, I realize one of the areas that I tend to kind of struggle in is communication, and really expressing my communication in terms of how I communicate with Erika. And so trying to learn how to communicate tends to be a challenge. I'm fortunate enough that I have a partner who's patient and, she's kind of game to do it. But I know there's times that it can be challenging and even frustrating. But this topic for me is a really good thing to revisit. What do you think?
I agree. Like you mentioned, one of the heavier causes of divorce is finances and communication. And I think typically in relationships, not understanding how the other communicates or what's effective communicating is key. When you're dating, you learn to talk with one another, and the communication seems to be pretty clear and easy to do, and dialogue is a little simpler. But again, you have two separate lives, but then once you bring in the lives together, and then you are now creating this family and this marriage, how does it function now? The communication, how does it work, right? And so I think it's imperative to go back to the fundamentals of how do we communicate? What's effective communicating or effective communication, and what are the tools and techniques that work, that produce productive communication? Mm-hmm. So I think that's something we can touch on. That's a good idea, Mr. Blanchard. Great idea, sir.
Well, thank you. And I wanted to revisit it because, like I said, it's something that I realize continues to come up, and learning how to do that. And being a person who has been essentially kind of introverted for most of my life, I tend to internalize a lot of my thought process and then not really convey it or speak on a certain situation. And then it can be frustrating, right? Because you have a person who can communicate, like in terms of Erika. Erika can communicate how she feels. She can communicate exactly what's on her mind at that particular moment. And for me, I'm usually in deep thought, or I'm internalizing it. And it's okay to do that every now and then, but sometimes you need to be able to just say what's on your mind, right? And so these are the things that I'm trying to learn. Because if you ask anybody, I thought I was an effective communicator, right? But I think that now that I'm getting older, and Erika and I had this discussion before, where she said, you're peeling back layers, right? It's like an onion. You're peeling back layers. So there's a lot of stuff that's being revealed to me in terms of just the way that I am now at this age in terms of how I communicate, and try to get better so I can be more effective communicator for myself, for my wife, for my kids, my family in general.
I think being honest with yourself too, right? Taking self-inventory on what are your needs, what are your wants, and not being ashamed to express that, because I think that we have to recognize as women and men as well that we are biologically made different. Mm-hmm. There's components within that, and there's some ways that we handle things that are completely different. And it's not because we do things differently just to annoy each other, but it's like we are produced and created in a different way. And that's where personality lies, right? And how we're made and how we've adjusted to life, right? For example, the words extrovert, introvert, and
Extrovert, yeah.
introvert and
Extrovert.
I say that word right now. Anyway, it's, people see it differently. They see it as ways people behave, like, oh, they're able to communicate effectively around people. They're more homebodies, but that's not what it is. So being mindful on using words and knowing the definition of them is important, because then you want to follow through with that, right? So extrovert is a person who gets energized from the outside world and able to communicate their feelings with people around. They're surrounded by people, their thoughts, they're able to share their thoughts, and they prefer to be communicative with trusted people, right? And introverts kind of talk to themselves and listen to themselves, and they energize and they find trust and grounding and their foundation with being alone in their own thoughts. And so sometimes when I listen to people and they say, well, it's because I'm an introvert or an extrovert, I want to be like, well, do you even know what that means? Because it's not what some people think it is.
Yeah.
And so for me, I would hear Sean consistently say, I'm an introvert. And I'd be like, okay, well, what does that mean? Because it doesn't mean what you probably think it means, that you're a loner, right? Because it doesn't mean that. It means that, what I just said. So how I understand that is that he needs time to process, right? He needs time to sit in his thoughts and think about what he wants to say and what he needs to do. And then he can handle the conversation or whatever. And I'm not. I'm someone who can talk on the dime, who can figure out their feelings right then and there. But I'm also someone who wants to take a step back and filter my feelings, because I'm also very reactive. And so if I don't stop and think about what I'm thinking and what I'm about to do or what I'm really feeling, and I'm forced, like someone's telling me, well, tell me how you're feeling. Tell me. I'm like, dude, cut it out already, because I need to stop and think, because I don't want to react or respond in a way that's not conducive to the conversation, conducive to my well-being, to theirs. So you understanding that that's how a person works, and then it shifts, right? There's times that you really want to have a conversation about something, like, no, I want to talk about this now. And I'm like, I don't want to. I think we have to respect that. Conversation shouldn't be forced. We shouldn't rely on the other person to facilitate a conversation. If you want to have the conversation, well, then lead it. But also respecting the fact that people may not want to talk in that moment.
Yeah.
They want to have their time.
Also the process, and also to think about, like what you were just saying, just being able to have that ability to do that. And then also to add this component as well, is people kind of change over time, right? And so what maybe used to be the norm or used to work maybe, a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, in terms of just the topics of communication and how you communicate it, that may have worked then, but that may not be where they are now in this process. Or maybe there could be an evolution to say, hey, I kind of tolerated this, but now I want more. I want more for you. I want more for me. I want more for us, right? I want us to be able to have, these conversations and it not turn into frustration, or not turn into a situation where you feel like the other person is not really listening and being present in a moment and being able to understand what it is that you're saying, or for them to have the confidence to be like, okay, hold on, let me process this. Let me not even process it like, okay, let me think about it. I'll come back to you in a couple of minutes, but more like, okay, so they can repeat what you're saying back. Okay, so you said this. So I'm understanding exactly what it is that you're saying in that moment, so that there's no misinterpretation. There's like, oh, well, I thought you were saying this. So like, well, did you ask? You know what I mean? It's things like that. It's being able to communicate effectively in that manner. And I think that, at least for me, like I said, I think you have shown a lot of patience, because like I said before, I did not realize I think I'm an effective communicator in terms of certain stuff, but the more and more I have conversations with you, the more I realize there are areas that I think I may be doing well in terms of communication that I'm not, that I'm able to get by in those areas. But
You mentioned that you're a good communicator in certain areas.
Mhm.
And what areas are those?
I think when it comes to maybe like on my job for certain things, I think I can be effective. It could be like written in terms of getting emails, maybe even in terms of conveying certain things that need to be done, especially if it's like a step-by-step thing. I think I can be okay with that. But I feel like that's not the case in all areas. Do you see what I'm saying? And you can interpret it to be like, if I'm an effective communicator in this area, then that communication must be effective in all areas.
So you mean like following direction?
Like following directions and things like that.
But is that communication, following direction
I mean,
for you?
I think it's a form of communication, but I don't think it encompasses all of communication. You know what I mean? Because you can follow directions, but you may not be able to effectively communicate what it is that, you know, you need from a certain situation. Like, okay, I'll give you a perfect example. I have the ability that, you know, I work as an engineer, so I have the ability to speak with other engineers. And if they say, okay, I need you to do this, I don't have an issue or have a problem with saying, okay, hold on for a second. Can you repeat this? Because what you just said didn't make sense at that moment, right? So I need to make sure I can understand exactly what you're saying so I can have these details to do that, right? I can do it there. However, if you take it back to what you're doing in your home life, I don't do that here. You know, I can say, oh, okay, yeah, what you were saying is good. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then 2 minutes, 3 minutes later, I'll be like, okay, so what do we have to do? Or what do we need to do? And the same way that I didn't take the time to, or I took the time at work to ask these questions, I don't do that in my personal life, which to me is like kind of baffling because it's saying, if you can do it in this area of your life, how come there's an issue in this other area, right? And being able to correlate that. And then also being able to realize that I'm doing it. Because before I was like, no, dude, I'm good. I can do that. But I'm realizing that this is something that is becoming an issue. And I want to be a effective communicator in all areas of my life. But I'm going to have to kind of do the work and first realize that there are issues that you're not communicating in. And you have to be confident enough to do it. And you have to be confident enough to say, hey, let me make sure that I understand this in the moment. Don't wait for the moment to pass and then come back and be like, okay, well, I didn't understand it then. It's like, well, that's the time that you need to do it. That's the time that you need to ask these questions. This is the time that you need to make sure that you understand. So it's like little things like that. Taking inventory and realizing like, yeah, these are areas that I definitely have to work on. And why is it that I can be successful here or I can implement certain things in this area, but kind of struggle to do it in this other area?
Mm-hmm. But I think that work is very black and white, right? You do this, you get this, especially in the engineering field. So I would assume that that would be a little more manageable because it's said that a majority of men are very logical, right? And so the logistics and the specifics of working is pretty black and white, right? It's this is what you do and this is what you don't do. This is what we need. This is what we don't need, right? So following those steps are pretty simple. I don't know. I'm not an engineer, but I would assume, right? So then when it comes to communication in a relationship, there's a lot of gray area, right? There's a lot of areas that aren't necessarily black and white. We're in this together and we make a decision, 50-50 chance it'll work, right? And so we have to go back to the drawing board and try to figure it out. And I think sometimes a person can feel really defeated, right? When the choice or the decision that was made wasn't necessarily black and white, right? So then that comes with because usually the communication is based on choices, right? We have to make this decision. We have to do this. We have to work together on that. And then here comes reality that it didn't work out as planned. And then the blame game starts. Well, if you wouldn't have made this choice, well, if you were better as a leader, well, if you knew how to calm down, if you weren't so reactive, if you weren't so emotional, then we probably would have had a better outcome,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's really what, kind of like with finances, right? We made the decision to spend money over here, or as a leader of the home, you decided to make the decision of buying a car and now we can't afford it or whatever, right? And I think that's what happens. The blame game happens where someone lacks
Yeah.
in one area or the other. So I think what would help is what works, right? Not just discussing and having like a venting session, but what works? What would be an effective to-do list or prompt or something that would help collect your thoughts?
I know for me, and I'm realizing it more now, is that I think having the ability to maybe even stop, like if we're having a conversation and I want to make sure that I'm understanding a point or really, being effective, I think being able to like stop in that moment and say, okay, hold on, let me repeat back to you what it is that you're saying so that I can have a better understanding. I think that's one method to be able to do it. It's not the overall solution, but it could be one method to be able to make sure that I'm understanding what it is that is being conveyed, and so that there won't be any misinterpretation. That's one way. I would say, I think another thing is being able to take self inventory when we have challenging discussions, right? Understanding that if we're having a conversation about something or it's about communication, understanding that this person, my partner, is telling me something not as a detriment, but as a way to say, okay, look, this is how we can be better. This is how we can improve. This is how we can evolve. This is how we can get to whatever solution that we're trying to do. But we need to do it effectively, right? And we need to be able to do it. And sometimes having difficult conversations is needed. And understanding that, okay, it's not a situation where this person is trying to break me down. They're trying to break old habits, right? And understanding that you're trying to break these habits, but it's also getting to a point where you're saying, I want you to get there. I want to be able to communicate with you. And this is what it is that I'm needing. So being able to say, take self-inventory and saying, okay, I'm hearing what you're saying. I need to take reflection, and then also being able to take action to it, not just to think about it, not just to say it, but actually being able to take action and being able to be consistent to the best of your ability, whatever that consistency is, whether it's, if I'm having a conversation with you at that moment, I need to kind of stop and make sure that I'm listening and not being distracted with my phone or something else, being able to let you know that in this moment, I'm listening to what it is that you're saying, right? And that I'm engaged in that moment. So those are kind of two things that I think could be a starting point. What do you think?
I mean, that would make sense, right? You have to take self-inventory, you're saying, reflect back on what the person was saying.
Yeah. I think those are like the two ones that I was saying, is being able to reflect on what you're saying, to understand, right? To understand and not interpret, and also take self-inventory.
And then as a man, what do you need from a woman? Because I would assume that I know what a woman wants because I'm a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me, like, I can think on my feet really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And I've practiced not being reactive, and I try to reflect, and I'm not impulsive.
Mm-hmm.
So when somebody like is in my face or trying to talk, they're angry and they're trying to get a reaction out of me, I can disconnect, right? So I would assume, right, having a not so reactive behavior with a man, because raising boys, I know that they don't really typically listen if I'm yelling, if I'm frustrated. They're trying to hear what they need to do so I can calm down, right? So if I'm having a serious conversation with them and I want them to reflect on the conversation and really think about their actions, it's never my motive to be manipulative. It's never my motive to go in and have them think the way I think, right? Because I'm their mom. I've had a lot of life way ahead of them that I've lived. And it's unfair for me to manipulate a situation for them to do what I would do in that situation when they need to learn it their way.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's also the same with my marriage.
Mm-hmm.
I want my husband to be the best version of himself. I want him to look at himself and see within what he wants to accomplish in life. my only desire for him in regards to that, and what I would hope would happen and that I could try to encourage, is that he will challenge himself to be the best that he can be, to work in excellence and to walk with integrity, because we have such a huge promise that we want to fulfill. And we have so many goals, and we have an empire that we're trying to build and keep it within our family, that for me, it doesn't, you can't, excuse my language, well, you can't half step it, right? I wanted to say a different word, but you can't half step it, because this requires true authenticity. And that's what I want, right? And so for all of my boys, that's what I would want for them. And it can't be manipulated in such a way that it's the way I perceive it to be. I need them to go to the source. I need them, which is God for us. I need them to remember about their faith. I need them to reconnect and really build on their relationship with Jesus Christ. I need them to be everything that we've taught them, that they've seen me grow within, because my children are older. I have 2 older children, and I've had them so young. So they got to see the manifestation of the mother they have now. It wasn't always like that, but they got to see the growth, right? The maturity of the mother they have now. And so they know what mom used to be like and what mom is now. And so that is a true example that God exists, and that faith is true, and that believing in him and in his promises will come to pass, right? So I think for Eric and Jesse, they can see that, they know it. So I expect a certain behavior from them than opposed to Neo and Geo, right? Because when they're younger, but they don't know the struggle the way Eric and Jesse know it. So they've had the one that it didn't feel wonderful at the time, but they've got to see that. They've got to see the true work of God in our lives. So what I'm saying is I would hope that when they make these major decisions, or when they're hoping for the best to happen in their life, they reflect back on that. That's my only hope. And the same with my husband. I don't try to manipulate a situation for him to do something that I would do in the way that I would do it, because I think that you are built completely different from me, right? But I do expect a certain excellence. I do expect you to be one with God. I do expect you to pray before major decisions. I want you to be a leader, and I want to depend on that. And there is times that, we share a lot about our life. There is times that I'm like, I can't make this decision on my own. I am an emotional creature. I need your logic. I need your black and white thinking right now, because right now all I see is gray. As moms, we kind of move ahead of our children and our husband to hopefully prevent something from happening. We're always like, okay, if we buy this bread, we won't need bread in a couple of days. If we buy milk, we won't need milk later. Oh, I see the cereal's running low. We need that. So our actions are always very preventative and intervention kind of thing. I know that men, or my husband and my children, my sons, don't think like that.
No, we don't.
So my hope is that he's going to bring that other portion to the table, so that when our decision is made, no one feels guilty. It was a partnership. And there was many a times that I felt guilty because I felt like I was making all the decisions. And now I'm like, I don't know what else to do, because sometimes I felt like I wasn't in it alone. Yeah. Thankfully, by the grace of God, we've never had any major setbacks or anything that has been detrimental to our marriage or our children or anything like that. But I know that there was times that I felt very drained, and I felt like the world was on my shoulders. And I think that's where the communication had to come in, because maybe because of my past trauma, I don't know how to ask for help. I don't know to convey a message of, I don't like when you do this, or I don't like when I have to do this, or I need your help in this way. Yeah. And there's times that, I'm so exhausted that I cannot break down what you need to hear from me. Figure it out, dude. I'm just exhausted. And I think for a man too, you're mentally exhausted because you also deal at work. And even though at work it's not an emotional job, you're still dealing with different people and their emotions. And that could just be at a capacity for you, right? And you're like at capacity, you're home and you're like, I can't deal with anything.
And that's why you see a lot of guys who end up getting on their phones or playing video games or whatnot, because they're trying to mentally detox from whatever the day was. But I think something that I wanted to touch base on, something that you said, especially when it comes to decision making and things like that, I think one of the issues with that is being comfortable. I think, and this is something that I'm learning as well, is that sometimes you can be so comfortable, like, okay, this person has got it, they have it. And just because you don't hear sirens going off doesn't mean that you don't need to step in. I think a lot of times, like, for instance, like you said, you do things in terms of preventative measures, right? Let me do something that can be preventive. I think of, most guys will probably recognize this, I think of like a car, right? Sometimes you're like, okay, well, I don't need to change the oil until the oil light comes on. And I'm just running this thing into the ground, not realizing that you do need to do some type of maintenance or something like that on it. So it shouldn't necessarily have to take for you to be like, I'm overwhelmed, can't you see it, right? It should be a situation where we can be able to communicate it, or we could be able to, for me to step out of whatever it is that I'm dealing with and being able to acknowledge, like, hey, my wife seems like there's a lot on her mind. She's having a bad day, or she's having not a bad day. She's having a challenging day or a difficult day. Let me touch base with her. Let me see how she's doing. Let me check in with her throughout the day. Right? Let me see how, hey, babe, how's your morning? Did you get to work okay? Just checking in to make sure that, like, these are different things that can be done to kind of have that communication process happening, throughout that process is being able to say, okay, how are you doing? That's one aspect. Another thing is, there's times that, like, you can come in and I'm like, okay, I think she seems exhausted. Let me knock out the dishes. Let me do this. Let me do that. It's almost
But isn't
instinctual.
it crazy right there what you're saying? Isn't it crazy that you're like, okay, I see she's exhausted. Let me go wash the dishes so she doesn't have to. I don't know about all women, but for me, I would think, why don't you just do them before
you get
before
there,
I get home? And I don't have to be in a bad mood or exhausted or tired or spent or whatever for you to do the dishes, right? I mean, this is not a situation that we're currently dealing with, but I'm just saying in general that's how a man thinks. Like, when you said, you see the oil light on and you're like, okay, here we go. Or like what we talked about in a previous episode with the Triggs, that sex wasn't happening for them. And so you start thinking, oh, something's wrong because we're not having sex. Well, usually it happened a couple weeks prior to not having sex for us, right? Because we're like, I'm tired. I'm not being catered to. I mean, I don't know. Everybody's different, but I'm just saying, like, that's just so interesting that for some, right? Because women can be like this. It's not until you're handed the red flag and cursed out sometimes, some people, that this person is upset, right? And so you think, well, I asked her how she was doing, and she said she was fine, or she just had a hard day at work, so let me go wash the dishes. I think if, for some, right, depending on how much the relationship is struggling, sometimes, it would be nice just for the man to be like, let me take Tuesdays. It's Taco Tuesdays. I can make some tacos, or Spaghetti Thursdays, or whatever, right? And you can go take a bath or do something consistent. Women are not, some, I don't want to generalize everyone, but, they might feel guilty to take a bath. Like, how can I take a bath when my children haven't had milk? It's always something. Somebody needs something. So what I'm saying is, how do we show others, right, to take, because it sounds, in theory, it sounds doable to take self-inventory, but what is that? Somebody could be like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
So self-inventory is taking time to look within, to be honest and transparent about what your needs are. And it's okay. It's okay to say, you know what, sometimes, babe, I just want to go to the bathroom and not be bothered.
Yeah.
Like, I used to get so, I will share this. I used to get so frustrated with Sean because he could be in the bathroom on the toilet for 20 minutes. And I'm like, yo, we have twin babies. I need you to come out here ASAP. And he'd be like, I'm just going to the bathroom. But men could go to the bathroom like multiple times a day. So he's going in the bathroom like 5 times a day for 20 minutes. That's a long time for a female. Like, hello,
Mm-hmm.
So then I started doing it. I was like, you know what? I'm going to take my phone in the bathroom. And I don't have to go to the bathroom that long. And I probably won't be in there for that long. But I was like, this is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And I started going upstairs to my bathroom, closing the bedroom door, going into the bathroom and closing the bathroom door and putting on my phone. And I'm typically not even using the bathroom. Yeah. I'm just looking at my phone. And I couldn't be mad at him anymore. Like, I don't blame him. Then I started, in some classes, they talk about useless, mindless scrolling. It's not always a bad thing. It's something that you don't have to use too much energy. You don't have to use too much brain activity. It's not the best for attention span, but mindless scrolling. It's so fulfilling.
Yeah.
And so I started thinking, if he's doing it, why beat him? Join him. And then at some point, right, you start feeling guilty, like, well, we could be cuddling. We could be doing this and that. And we prayed on it. And then Sean was like, we should be watching TV together, or we should be cuddling. And that was all God, because I was like, oh, I wanted to. And I didn't do this because it's not the best way to handle a situation. But I was like, oh, so now you want to cuddle. But I was like, all right, cool. I'll get off the phone. But I think that understanding each other's point of view, understanding why we each do what we do. Like, for example, when I would wake up at 4 a.m. and Sean was not with it, he was like, no, going to the gym, making an effort to do it. It felt like I was dragging him to.
She was. Definitely she was. She definitely was.
But now he's like, oh, we're going to the gym because he likes how he feels. Mm-hmm. So I was trying to explain to him that for a man, it's not easy for him to make an emotional connection to stuff the way that it is easy for us. Mm-hmm. So I was doing my best to ask him, like, how do you feel after the gym? How do you do this? How do you do that? Don't you feel better? Don't you do this? Don't you taking your vitamins? Mm-hmm. Right? I would give him a whole bunch of vitamins. And he was like, right? Yeah. I guess. But then I would ask him, how's your joints feel? How do your stomach feel? How does this feel? And he was feeling better. And then having the emotional connection that when I don't take this or when I don't do this, I feel like crap.
Yeah.
Right? And it could be black and white thinking, but understanding like I'm not feeling like the best version of myself is a more emotional connection. And that helped him make those decisions of, even Erika, if we're late and we only go to the gym for 30 to 45 minutes opposed to an hour and 10, at least we're there for 30 minutes. At least we're walking. At least we're getting our body moving. Like he was getting it. And that helped significantly make those choices of integrity and with excellence, because you're thinking about the greater purpose rather than just how you're feeling in that moment. Yeah. And that's really what excellence is looking at the greater scheme of things, right? Pushing yourself and challenging yourself to the best version of yourself and doing it in such a way that it may not be easy in the moment, but you know that eventually it's going to pay off. And that's what excellence is, doing everything you can to be the best of yourself.
Yeah.
Because you want to, right?
I would say, like, I agree 100% with you because it was like pulling teeth to get me to go because I was like, But for one, there was a couple of reasons, and I just wanted to touch base on that. One was I did start feeling better, right? I did recognize that, and I did say, she's right. Another thing is time constraints, to be perfectly honest with you, because we are so busy in everything that we do, we have limited time to do a lot of things. So this was the time. The time was to go here and to do this and to realize if you're going to be the best version of yourself to get there, this is what you're going to need to do. It is a sacrifice. It's a sacrifice, but it's a sacrifice worth it. Because if you have goals and ambitions and dreams and things that you want to do, you need to be healthy to do it. And at this point in my life, health is everything. It really is. And
movement, flexibility.
Just the ability to do that. We've been blessed to see, Wella, who's in her 90s, 98, almost 100.
My grandma. And Wella's my grandma.
She's still mobile. She's able to do the things that she needs to do. But we want longevity, right? Because the things that we plan on doing is going to impact generations, right? We're building something for a legacy. So if we're going to be able to do it and we're going to be successful in what we do, it's going to take that type of dedication to our health, our physical health, to also our mental health, right? And to spiritual health, right? Being able to tap into certain things, especially when you first wake up, getting on the Bible, Bible app, looking at whatever the thing that you're reading for that particular day,
Devotion.
the devotion, that you're reading for that day, meditating, being able to kind of
Get your mind together. I think that was really great too, because I would tell Sean about meditation and I get it too. It must not be the easiest thing to be married to a mental health provider because it's very touchy-feely, right? It is. And it feels very like you're telling me what to do and foreign to a man, right? Or to you.
You're right, to a man.
Because,
we don't tap into,
because it's
we
like,
don't tap
sit
into them.
still.
Yeah.
I'm going to fall asleep, right? But it ended up where a lot of the challenges he was facing in our marriage, and when I say challenges, it was like communication and like I would push him to do, like, for example, we had a long discussion about excellence. And I was like, I'm tired of standing still. We need to keep moving. I'm getting bored.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, but we're so comfortable.
Yeah.
And he's right, because we have so many moving pieces and we wear so many hats, from taking care of my grandma, taking care of our moms, taking care of our children, taking care of older children, which is a totally different way of taking care of. It's totally different. Everybody has comments when they have little children that you're so lucky you have older children. And it's like, you have no idea. Your prayer life is going to be, if you think you're praying now and it's wonderful and you're praying all the time, you have no idea when they're on those streets and they're driving and they're, partying and they're doing all these things. Your faith and not wanting to, again, manipulate a situation where you're like, dude, why are you making these choices? When it's affecting not just your emotional and physical well-being, but it's starting to hit your finances. And you're like, yo, one more car accident and I'm taking you off my insurance. Like, that's how deep it gets. One more whatever and I'm done, And so I'm just saying, I think with that, you have to be very mindful on how you're pushing yourself and how you're communicating and how you're, when, like I was saying, we were challenging ourselves in a way that I wanted more. And it couldn't just be that we're in school. We have to do more. Like, I want to be an expert in my field. And that's going to take movement from both of us, because you also want to be an expert in your field. So we're going to have to push ourselves in ways, getting up at 4:00 in the morning, meditating so that we have our mind right and connected. And because there's so many moving pieces that we're like all over the place when we're thinking and doing things. And I didn't want that anymore. I wanted something to be stable. And for me, what's stable for me is my mind. I can't do anything if my mind is everywhere. I can't. I'm going to half step everything. So when he started to notice that it was spilling over in his schoolwork, he had a mentor tell him, you need to start meditating. And then he was like, oh. I was like, oh, so now you want to meditate because this person told you?
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah. It takes an outside person because we're touchy-feely. It's just what it is. I can't be offended by it. I get it. I understand it. It took another woman to tell you. She's lucky she's not fine, because it would have been no. But
yeah.
But yeah, meditation, prayer and devotionals, working out, getting the body to move, making sure we're flexible. I always hear to make sure that your mind is well and you're able-bodied.
Yeah. I think that, like, everything that you said, just, you hit it on the head. I definitely think that this is a topic that we can talk to ad nauseum. I definitely think maybe a follow-up episode, we can even dive a little bit deeper into it. But as for now, this was our episode 2 on communication.
I think we should have somebody here. We should interview another couple and learn about their communication and what works for them, and maybe even provide a little bit of coaching. So if anybody is interested, we have open auditions.
Yes. It's definitely, we're on all of the social medias, Facebook, Instagram. We also have information on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, and YouTube. So we would love to get feedback from you, figure out what are some topics that you guys would like to hear about. Like I said, this one particularly was on communications. If you guys have any ideas as to, how you communicate effectively in your relationship, we would love to hear it. Like you said, we're not experts. We're 10 years in the game, but we're just giving you our experience and just our viewpoint as to what it is. So thank you once again for joining us for Family on Lock podcast. We appreciate your continual dedication. Thank you, babe, for once again
being awesome.
being awesome. I love you very much, and I appreciate you.
Am I supposed to say it back?
Yes.
Thank you, babe, for being you.
Yeah. You're welcome.
No, thank you, babe, for coming with me on this journey, for trusting God with me,
Yes.
for me, and all of the above. All right, people, we thank you so much for being a part of this episode, and we will see you in the next one.
Peace.